The pregnant woman was shot and killed in her DeKalb County apartment. We took you live to the scene as it was breaking on Channel 2 Action News this morning. And Channel 2's Steve Gelbach is live at the complex off Columbia Drive in DeKalb County. And Steve, you spoke with the victim's parents.
Yeah, Fred, they told me that she was 9 months pregnant, getting ready to welcome a new baby boy into the world next week. And now they want DeKalb police to find the suspect who took both lives from them.
Somebody took a blessing from all of us, and we will get justice.
It's 5:15 in the morning. Decatur, Georgia, June 16, 2026. The woods at Peppertree Apartments is quiet. Still, most residents are deep in sleep, completely unaware of what is about to happen just a few feet away. Inside one of those apartments, a young woman lies in bed. She is 23 years old. She is 40 weeks pregnant full term, due to deliver her baby boy any day now. Just 48 hours ago, she was surrounded by family and friends, laughing, unwrapping gifts, celebrating the son she had already named. She had just moved into her first apartment. Her own space, her own beginning. Her two Bobbies, ages 1 and 3, are curled up right beside her, fast asleep. She has no idea what is standing outside her window. Then it starts. 11 shots, fired directly through her bedroom window, one after another, in the dark while she sleeps. Her children don't move, they don't run, they are too young to understand what is happening. By the time the sun rises over DeKalb County that morning, Shakiya Pridgen is gone. And so is her son, Kyren, who never took a single breath outside of his mother's womb. But here is where this story gets darker. The man police arrested for this. He had already killed before. The system knew exactly who he was, and just weeks before that bedroom window shattered, they let him go. So how does a convicted killer end up standing outside a pregnant woman's window at 5 in the morning, pulling a trigger 11 times? That is the question this case demands you answer. Welcome to Real Crime Stories. If you're new here, this channel is dedicated to the cases that deserve to be told with truth, depth, and respect for the victims at the center of them. If that's the kind of content you're looking for, hit that subscribe button right now, drop a like on this video, and leave a comment below telling me what you think about this case. Your support is what keeps this channel going and keeps these stories being told. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Shakiya Pridgen was building something. Not in a grand, headline-grabbing kind of way. In the quiet, determined way that young mothers do, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice, when they decide that their children deserve better than whatever the world hands them by default. At 23, she had already proven she was serious about that mission. She had secured her own apartment at the woods at Peppertree in Decatur, Georgia. Her first place. 4 walls that belonged to her. A roof under which her family could finally exhale. Her relatives described a daughter who attended church regularly, who poured herself into raising her 2 toddlers, who kept her head pointed forward even when circumstances tried to pull her backward. Her father, Paco, put it plainly, she had a good heart. Her mother, Verdena Scott, said she was doing everything a mother was supposed to do.
23 years old, just starting her life. She had a 1-year-old son, she had a 3-year-old daughter. They both were laying in the bed with her when this happened. By the grace of God, they didn't get hurt. But someone came and shot. We know who you are. We are going to seek justice. They are looking for you. Everyone's looking for you. You killed and took an innocent woman and an innocent baby. And it's no coming back from that. She was a blessing to my family. She was a blessing to so many people. She was very well known, beautiful. She was a beautiful girl, beautiful inside and out.
And she was about to do one more thing. Bring another life into this world. His name was already chosen, Kyren, a son she had carried for 9 full months, 40 weeks to be exact, ready to arrive at any moment. Her body was prepared. Her nursery was stocked. Her heart was wide open. 2 days before she died, Shakiya celebrated a baby shower surrounded by the people who loved her most. There were decorations, laughter, gifts passed between hands, photographs taken of a woman at the peak of anticipation. A room full of people who had no idea they were saying goodbye. Nobody knew it then. How could they? She was glowing. She was days away from holding her son. She went home that evening with a future waiting for her. She never reached it. 48 hours after that celebration, while Decatur slept, Shakiya lay in her bedroom with her 1-year-old and 3-year-old tucked against her. Two Bobbies who needed their mother. 3 heartbeats sharing the same mattress, breathing slowly in the dark. Outside that bedroom window, someone had other intentions. At precisely 5:15 that Tuesday morning, a figure approached the exterior of the apartment at Peppertree Circle. Deliberately, purposefully. This was not random. Investigators would later confirm there was nothing accidental about what followed: the trajectory of the shots, the positioning, the target. Somebody knew exactly whose window that was. 11 rounds were discharged directly through the glass. Not 1, not 2, 11. The kind of number that removes any doubt about intent. The kind of number that speaks to rage or desperation or both. Shakiya was struck 3 separate times as she lay there. Her toddlers, miraculously, were not physically injured, but they were present for every single shot. 2 children under the age of 4, waking up in a bedroom that had just become a crime scene, beside a mother who would never open her eyes again. First responders arrived within minutes. Shakiya was still alive when they reached her. Paramedics worked urgently, loading her into an ambulance and rushing her toward the nearest hospital with everything they had. But the damage was catastrophic. The wounds were too severe. By the time medical staff fought to deliver baby Kyren, the son who had been protected inside his mother's body through every single hardship she had faced, neither of them survived. A young woman who had just unwrapped baby gifts 48 hours earlier was pronounced dead. Her son never breathed outside of her. DeKalb County detectives descended on the woods at Peppertree as dawn broke across the Atlanta metro area. Officers taped off Peppertree Circle. Neighbors peered from doorways. A community that had barely stirred tried to process what had unfolded in the pre-dawn darkness right among them. But while investigators combed the exterior of that apartment for shell casings and physical evidence, Shakiya's family already had a suspicion gnawing at them, one that investigators would soon confirm.
We know who you are. We are going to seek justice. They are looking for you. Everyone's looking for you. You killed and took an innocent woman and an innocent baby.
Whoever did this didn't stumble upon that address. They had been there before. Devin Anthony was not a stranger to violence. That is not an assumption. That is a documented fact, written across court records, probation files, and criminal databases stretching back years before that bedroom window ever shattered. But Shakiya's family did not need court documents to recognize his name. They knew exactly who he was. To them, he was not simply a suspect. He was the father of Kyren, the unborn son who never drew breath. He was Shakiya's ex-boyfriend, someone who had once occupied space in her life, in her home, in her future, someone she had once trusted. That context matters enormously because it reframes everything. This was not a stranger lurking in shadows. This was someone with intimate knowledge of her address, her schedule, her bedroom layout, and exactly which window faced her pillow. 11 shots do not find their mark by accident. They find it through familiarity, through access, through a level of proximity that only comes from having once been close to the person on the receiving end. Investigators moved fast. DeKalb County detectives cross-referenced evidence gathered at Peppertree Circle against known associates connected to Shakiya. Anthony's name surfaced quickly. What followed was a coordinated operation between the DeKalb County Sheriff's Office and the United States Marshals Service, 2 agencies combining resources to ensure he had nowhere left to retreat. They located him at a private residence in Riverdale, Georgia. He did not evade capture for long. Deputies moved in, took him into custody without incident and transported him directly to DeKalb County Jail. No bail was offered. No release was granted. He was processed and held on a charge list that grew as prosecutors reviewed the full scope of what occurred that morning: malice murder, feticide, 5 separate counts of aggravated assault, first-degree criminal damage to property, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. That last charge carries particular weight, because Devin Anthony had absolutely no legal right to hold a weapon. Here is where this case transforms from a tragedy into something that forces an uncomfortable reckoning with the institutions designed to protect people exactly like Shakiya. Cast your mind back to September 2021. Devin Anthony, then in his early 20s, was indicted in Fulton County on a murder charge, an actual homicide. Someone lost their life, and a grand jury determined there was sufficient evidence to bring Anthony before a court and hold him accountable for it. What happened instead? Prosecutors negotiated. Charges were reduced through a plea arrangement, dropping from murder to voluntary manslaughter and aggravated assault. Then came the application of Georgia's First Offender Act, a legal provision designed to give qualifying individuals a pathway toward rehabilitation without a permanent felony conviction shadowing their record. On paper, the philosophy behind that provision has merit. In practice, what it produced here was this: a sentence of 20 years, structured so that only 11 months required physical confinement. Because Anthony had already spent roughly that duration in pretrial detention, he walked directly onto probation without serving a single additional day behind bars. A man originally indicted for murder was supervised through probation rather than incarceration. The conditions attached to that probation were clear: regular check-ins with his assigned officer, completion of anger management programming, compliance with drug screening requirements, standard accountability measures attached to a non-standard level of leniency. Anthony violated every single one. By February 2026, just 4 months before Shakiya's bedroom window was riddled with bullets, his probation officer flagged multiple breaches. He had skipped mandatory reporting sessions. He had not enrolled in or completed anger management. He had submitted a failed drug test. The violations were documented, reviewed, and escalated. His probation was formally revoked for 60 days. After those 60 days elapsed, his probation was quietly reinstated. The conditions remained. The supervision continued. And Devin Anthony, a man originally charged with murder, walked back into society with a firearms restriction attached to his name and nothing physically preventing him from accessing one. Weeks later, he allegedly stood outside a pregnant woman's window at dawn with a gun and pulled the trigger 11 times. DeKalb County Sheriff Melody Maddox addressed the public directly following Anthony's arrest, calling the act senseless violence that devastated both a family and an entire community.
This was a targeted shooting. Take a look at all the bullet holes in this bedroom window. We counted at least 10 shots. Police say the man under arrest fired a flurry of shots through this window early yesterday morning, striking this pregnant mom and her unborn child. They later died. Miraculously, 2 of her other children who were sleeping beside her weren't hurt.
But for Shakiya's loved ones, the word senseless barely scratches the surface of what they are grappling with. Because this did not feel senseless to them, it felt inevitable. There is a particular kind of grief that arrives not just with loss, but with the unbearable awareness that the loss did not have to happen. That is where Shakiya Pridgen's family now lives. Not simply mourning a daughter, a sister, a mother, but wrestling with the crushing reality that multiple points existed along this timeline where someone, a prosecutor, a judge, a probation officer, a legislator, held the authority to interrupt what ultimately unfolded at Peppertree Circle on June 16, 2026. And at each of those junctures, the decision made allowed Devin Anthony to remain free, remain mobile, and remain dangerous. Verdena Scott is not collapsing beneath that weight. She said so publicly, standing in the rain outside the apartment complex where her daughter took her final breath. She vowed to nurture the grandchildren Shakiya left behind, a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old who will grow up carrying fragments of a morning. They are too young to articulate, but old enough to have absorbed somewhere deep in their nervous systems. 2 children who lost their mother and their brother simultaneously before either of them could fully speak either name. That image alone should rattle something loose in every person paying attention. Scrutiny surrounding Anthony's legal history has ignited fierce public debate across Georgia and well beyond its borders. At the core sits a fundamental tension that defense attorneys, prosecutors, and criminal justice advocates have argued over for decades: the gap between rehabilitation-focused sentencing and public safety outcomes. Georgia's First Offender Act exists precisely because the data consistently demonstrates that lengthy incarceration without rehabilitative infrastructure frequently produces worse outcomes than supervised community reintegration. The intention behind the provision is not careless. It reflects a genuine attempt to balance accountability with the statistical reality that permanent felony records devastate employment prospects, housing access, and long-term civic participation. But intentions do not absorb bullets. And the documented record here raises questions that transcend philosophical debate. Anthony did not simply receive leniency. He actively violated the conditions attached to that leniency, repeatedly, across multiple categories, and the consequence amounted to a temporary 60-day interruption followed by full reinstatement. No escalation. No reassessment of whether the original arrangement remained appropriate given his demonstrated unwillingness to comply. No updated risk evaluation triggered by a pattern of evasion from a person originally charged with ending someone else's existence. Those failures belong to specific institutions making specific decisions. Shakiya's family understands that clearly, and they are not staying quiet about it. Beyond the legal architecture, something else demands acknowledgement in this story. Domestic situations involving ex-partners, pregnancy, and firearms represent one of the most statistically lethal combinations documented across violent crime research. Pregnant women and women in the postpartum period face elevated homicide risk, with intimate partners identified as the leading perpetrators in those cases. The presence of a firearm in a domestic conflict escalates the probability of a fatal outcome exponentially. These are not obscure findings buried in academic literature. They are findings law enforcement agencies, prosecutors, and courts have access to every single time a case involving these variables crosses their desks. Devin Anthony checked every indicator: prior violence conviction, volatile intimate partner history, firearm prohibition suggesting prior recognition of his danger level, active probation violations demonstrating continued disregard for oversight, an ex-girlfriend 40 weeks pregnant with his child. Every flag was visible. Every warning existed in writing somewhere inside a case file. Kyren never had an advocate inside that system. Nobody filed a motion on behalf of a child not yet born, whose mother was connected by pregnancy to a man courts had already identified as dangerous enough to restrict from owning weapons. Nobody connected those dots urgently enough to alter what happened before dawn on a Tuesday morning. Shakiya Pridgen was 23 years old. She attended church. She raised her bobbies. She moved into her first apartment and dreamed about marriage and stability and the future her son deserved to inherit alongside her. Kyren was 40 weeks developed, named, anticipated, celebrated at a baby shower 2 days before someone stole his first breath. 2 children ages 1 and 3 now carry the rest of their childhoods without the only parent who tucked them in that night. Devin Anthony sits in DeKalb County Jail without bond, facing charges that could imprison him for the remainder of his natural life. But for Shakiya's family, justice through conviction, however necessary, does not answer the question that will follow them forever. If the system had simply done what it promised, would any of this have required a verdict at all? That is the Shakiya Pridgen case. A young mother, an unborn son, a system that knew exactly who was out there and opened the door anyway. Rest in peace, Shakiya. Rest in peace, Kyren.